Hello everyone, welcome back to another Grimgar video. I'm continuing on my little mini-series where I talk about the chapters that I don't have time for in my full review series. Except this time I'm going to make a larger video about this chapter specifically. This is because this is one of the chapters that is entirely necessary for you guys to know what happens before volume 15. This chapter takes Ranta's POV while he's essentially living by himself and trying to head back to Alterna. After this, I will be doing Yume's chapter because she has an entire thing that actually goes on for a while. It's honestly pretty good. But if you enjoy stuff like this, please let me know in the comments, subscribe, and of course, if you missed my previous videos where I talked about chapters I just didn't have time for my main review series, please check the playlist. I basically just summarize the chapter and give my opinion on them. Anyway, let's begin with today's video. This chapter comes from 14+. So it has one of my favorite subtitles. It's Grimgar Volume 14+, Not Choosing to Stay the Same. This chapter takes place at the very end of the light novel, and it follows Ranta's adventures after basically being separated from his friends for about roughly 3.5 years. The chapter actually starts with Ranta sneaking into an orc farm to steal some weird bird thing that it looks kind of like a chicken. However, he is caught by enslaved half-orcs known as numus, and some of them start freaking out and yelling. Ranta curses and grabs the chicken and runs out of the barn. He's chased down by 3 orcs that have very basic weapons. He leaps at one of them, stabs it in the chest, grabs his short sword that it had in its hand, yeets it at another one behind it, and then finishes off the last one by cutting its head off. So, Ranta's gotten a lot better at fighting. Scene then changes to Ranta being at his campfire, cutting up the bird and actually cooking it. He hears some noises in the bushes, and a young numu comes out of the bush. He was one of the enslaved ones in the barn, and it seemed to have followed him. It's also very, very hungry. Ranta decides to be kind of nice and give him like a leg of the chicken, then proceeds to eat the rest of the chicken and doesn't want to share any of the rest of it. He even apparently eats the bones, but then immediately gives the kid the last piece of meat. Ranta then senses the presence of more orcs, and he grabs the kid and runs away. Meanwhile, the kid also has the piece of meat still in his mouth. He's still eating while running with Ranta, which I think was really cute. Orcs come through the bushes and start shooting arrows at Ranta. Ranta turns around and starts deflecting the arrows, but one got by him, and all he hears is a grunt behind him. Ranta then leaps forward and takes out all of the orcs that were chasing him by cutting off their arms, legs, and heads in very brutal fashion. Ranta then finds the numu kid in a bush and realizes the kid got shot by an arrow dead center of his chest. He pulls out an herb pack that he actually has and tries to help the kid out as much as he can by numbing the pain and trying to stop the bleeding. The kid is still breathing heavily and is very clearly not going to last very long. Ranta then picks up the kid and moves on. The scene then changes later on to Ranta at another campfire cooking more food. He gives the kid a giant piece of meat and tells him that he has to eat. The kid numu is very, very weak, but he's still eating, and Ranta's just happy that the kid's actually eating. After that, Ranta carries the kid away and starts going into the woods again to head towards another town. On the way to the town, though, the kid dies on Ranta's back. On the outskirts of a new town, Ranta buries the kid and leaves some money on top of his grave. Ranta doesn't really know why he's decided to leave money there because, it's very valuable to him, but he thought it was like the best thing he could have done for the kid. Ranta has an internal monologue about logic and how it doesn't always dictate the correct thing he should be doing. And he seems to be more interested in following his heart and what he wants to do. The story seems to be implying that Ranta's a lot more in tune with his feelings compared to how he was before. He also cuts a little notch into his mask to remember the kid by. Also, for the record, I did forget to mention this, Ranta is wearing a mask. It's actually pretty important because he uses it as a way to hide among other species, but also because he thinks it looks cool, if I'm being entirely honest. Ranta then heads towards the town that he was standing outside of, and he uses the mask to be able to go around because they don't like humans there. The town is full of kobolds, goblins, orcs, elves. There's also halflings, but I'm not sure if they're halflings or gnomes. They sound very similar. And they're also specifically stated to be shorter than dwarves, so I'm pretty sure they're one or the other. Us D&D fans need to know which one it is. I'm sorry. He goes into a bar and buys a dark elf a drink. Ranta was watching this dark elf for a little while and actually realizes that the dark elf is being followed by some not so great people. The dark elf is named Wesle, by the way, and he decides that him and Ranta should talk outside. Wesle goes outside and Ranta slowly follows him from a little bit of a distance. 2 orcs attack Wesle and actually start to threaten him, and Ranta jumps in, kills the first one immediately, and the second one and him have a back and forth, and it's kind of an even exchange. Ranta then says, "Fuck it," exhausts his back, and then uses his magic to basically weaken the orc and then buff himself to make himself stronger, and then immediately kills the orc. That sounds so cheap and so funny to me, honestly. Imagine you fighting someone evenly and then the guy just makes you super sick and then makes himself stronger just to kill you. After that, Wesle actually agrees to go with Ranta because he definitely needs protection. While they're traveling, they actually stop and rest in a cave, and this is where Ranta finds out that Wesle is actually heading towards the Shadow Forest. The Shadow Forest is basically where all the elves, I'm pretty sure dark elves as well, all hang out, and this is like their main home. The Shadow Forest is also very, very, very dangerous. or it's very dangerous if you're not an elf. Wesle then explains that he's not a very popular guy in the Shadow Forest, and explains that the No-Life King's armies, so kobolds, orcs, undead, goblins, dark elves, they're all kind of coming together to start a war again. Wesle then explains that they need to use a special elven ritual to actually find the city in the Shadow Forest. And this is one of the reasons why it's so hard to find city if you're not an elf. Wesle then sits down and starts to ritually cut himself and mumble a bunch of magic mumbo jumbo for 2 whole days. The cutting part was only for like a little bit. The mumbling was for 2 whole days. Ranta got so hungry he started eating ants and random mushrooms he found around the area. He also kept licking a bunch of stuff and seeing if it made his tongue numb, which was kind of funny if I'm being honest. In the last day, Ranta starts sensing a presence. And this presence actually was around for like the couple days, but it kept running away, so he couldn't actually catch it. But at the very last day, the presence got very, very desperate, and Ranta jumped at it, and it turns out it was a tree person. This thing is straight up just like a smaller group from Guardians of the Galaxy, by the way. And this thing was holding its own against Ranta pretty well, even though Ranta's got a cutting weapon. So honestly, this thing was awesome because it was using its vines to deflect the sword constantly. Ranta jumps back and uses Demon Call and summons a Zodiac that looks like he did back in volume 13 when it turned into its cool Grim Reaper thing. Zodiac is so strong now that this guy just cuts the monster into pieces after, of course, insulting Ranta. After killing the tree person, Zodiac goes back to insulting Ranta, and Ranta got mad and just made him disappear. Wesle wakes up from his trance and actually knows where he needs to go now. Wesle leads Ranta to an area in the forest, and Wesle actually disappears. Ranta is then immediately attacked. He deflects some arrows, and then he realizes he's surrounded by a bunch of elves. A female shaman elf then uses his magic to knock him unconscious. Ranta then wakes up inside of a jail cell, and he uses this time to actually reflect on what he wants. And he reinforces the fact that he wants to go back to Alterna to see, and I quote, her beautiful smile. He's thinking about Yume. Who would have seen that coming? And then a small elf child comes out of nowhere and tells him that they're essentially under attack. She releases Ranta from the jail cell, and Ranta seems to notice that she looks very familiar for some reason. He also pats her on the head because he thinks she's cute. She absolutely hates this. The kid leads Ranta all the way to Wesle and the shaman lady, and Wesle explains to Ranta because Ranta asks him about what's going on between him and this child and this extra lady. And, well, basically, Wesle is the kid's dad. The girl hates Wesle. It's a whole family mess thing. Everyone hates Wesle because he's a dark elf. A lot of political stuff when it comes to the races and stuff and the elves and stuff. It's pretty much, essentially, everyone hates dark elves, and the kid is half dark elf, and everyone hates her. It's kind of fucked. Ranta then kind of feels bad for them, pats the kid in the head again, and the kid gets mad at him. Ranta then leads the family out of the city into the forest. Ranta then hears some wolves howling, realizes who they're being attacked by, which for the record was Forgun, and Ranta gets ready to fight. Ranta then tells Wesle to get his family out of here while Ranta holds off the Forgun army. And that's the end of the chapter. Honestly, in volume 14 plus, this is the best chapter in an entire volume. I love how much more mature Ranta actually feels, and I like just how similar he still feels, but like he still feels like Ranta, but it does genuinely feel like he's changed a lot. I do wish we still got that in between though, like letting us know like how he got to this point. We get some of that in like volume 11, I think it was, but it's still kind of like would be nice to get more of like how he decided to get the mask, and I want more of like, I guess I'm saying I want more Ranta chapters, I'm being entirely honest. The next large video I put up is going to be Yume's chapter, which is also just as good as this chapter. I genuinely want more Yume chapters because that chapter is awesome. If you got this far in the video, thank you very much. I honestly appreciate all the support we've been getting. And if you guys want to see more Grimgar content or other light novel content or book content in general, subscribe to me on YouTube and hit the like button, share, tell me in the comments down below. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great night, everyone. Bye-bye.